Sarah walked down the quiet street as the sun started to set. The orange light made long shadows on the ground. She had her bag tight in her hand and looked around carefully. This was her first day in the new town, and everything felt strange. The moving truck had left 3 hours ago. All her things were now in boxes inside the small house at the end of the street. Sarah was 25 years old and had never lived alone before. She always stayed with her family or friends, but now she had a new job and needed to start fresh. The house was old but clean. It had 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, and a small kitchen. The front yard had grass that needed cutting and a big tree that gave good shade. Sarah liked the tree right away. She thought it would be nice to sit under it and read books. As she walked to the local store, Sarah saw other people in the neighborhood. An old man was watering his flowers. He waved at her with a friendly smile. 2 children were playing with a ball in their front yard. They stopped and looked at her with curious eyes. A woman was walking her dog, and the dog wagged its tail when it saw Sarah. The store was small but had everything she needed. Sarah bought milk, bread, eggs, and some fresh fruit. The man behind the counter was middle-aged with kind eyes. He asked if she was new in town. When Sarah said yes, he told her his name was Tom and that he had run the store for 15 years. Tom explained that the town was peaceful and safe. Most people had lived there for many years and knew each other well. He said there was a library, a small park, and a coffee shop on Main Street. There was also a school and a church. The nearest big city was 1 hour away by car. Sarah thanked Tom and walked back home. The streetlights were starting to turn on, and she could smell dinner cooking from different houses. It made her stomach growl because she had not eaten since morning. She was too busy with the move to think about food. Back at her house, Sarah looked at all the boxes. There were so many of them. She felt tired and did not know where to start. She decided to unpack just the things she needed for tonight. She found her bed sheets, some clothes, and her toothbrush. The rest could wait until tomorrow. She made her bed. Sarah heard a knock on the door. She felt nervous because she did not know anyone yet. She looked through the window and saw the woman with the dog from earlier. The woman was holding a plate covered with a cloth. Sarah opened the door slowly. The woman introduced herself as Mrs. Peterson and said she lived 2 houses down. She had brought Sarah a homemade pie to welcome her to the neighborhood. The smell was wonderful, and Sarah felt grateful for the kind gesture. Mrs. Peterson was about 60 years old with gray hair and a warm smile. She explained that it was a tradition in their neighborhood to welcome new people with food. She also gave Sarah her phone number in case she needed help with anything. Before leaving, Mrs. Peterson invited Sarah to join her for coffee the next morning. After Mrs. Peterson left, Sarah sat at her small kitchen table and ate a piece of the pie. It was apple pie with cinnamon, and it tasted like home. She felt less lonely and more hopeful about her new life. Maybe this town would be a good place for her after all. The next morning, Sarah woke up early. The sun was shining through her bedroom window, and she could hear birds singing in the big tree outside. She felt more rested than she had in weeks. The stress of moving and starting over had kept her awake many nights. Sarah made herself coffee and toast for breakfast. She looked out the window and saw the neighborhood coming to life. People were leaving for work, children were walking to school, and dogs were being taken for their morning walks. Everything seemed so normal and peaceful. At 10 o'clock, Sarah walked to Mrs. Peterson's house. It was a blue house with white shutters and a garden full of colorful flowers. Mrs. Peterson answered the door quickly, as if she had been waiting. She was wearing an apron and had flour on her hands. They sat in Mrs. Peterson's kitchen, which smelled like fresh bread. Mrs. Peterson served coffee in pretty cups and offered Sarah some warm muffins. She asked about Sarah's job and why she had moved to their town. Sarah explained that she worked as a nurse and had gotten a position at the small hospital nearby. Mrs. Peterson was excited to hear this. She said the hospital was very important to their community and everyone respected the people who worked there. She told Sarah that her late husband had been a doctor at the same hospital for 30 years before he retired. As they talked, Sarah learn more about the town. Mrs. Peterson explained that most families had lived there for generations. The town had grown slowly over the years, but it kept its small-town feeling. People still helped each other, and children could play safely in the streets. Mrs. Peterson also warned Sarah about a few things. She said that winter could be very cold and snowy, so Sarah should prepare her house before the weather changed. She mentioned that the old water pipes in some houses could freeze if not taken care of properly. Sarah listened carefully and asked questions. She wanted to learn as much as possible about her new home. Mrs. Peterson seemed happy to share her knowledge and offered to help Sarah find good repair people if she needed them. After an hour of pleasant conversation, Sarah thanked Mrs. Peterson and walked back home. She felt much better about her decision to move. Having a friendly neighbor made everything seem less scary and more manageable. The rest of the day, Sarah spent unpacking boxes and arranging her furniture. She put her books on the shelves, hung her pictures on the walls, and organized her clothes in the closet. Slowly, the house started to feel more like home. In the evening, Sarah sat under the big tree in her front yard. She had brought a book and a cup of tea with her. The air was cool and fresh, and she could hear the sound of crickets starting their night songs. She felt peaceful for the first time in months. As she read her book, Sarah thought about her future in this town. She hoped she would make good friends and enjoy her work at the hospital. She wanted to be part of this community and contribute something positive to it. Tomorrow would be her first day at the hospital. She felt nervous but also excited. This was her chance to start over and build the life she had always wanted. She had left behind many things in her old city, including some painful memories. Now she could focus on the future and all the possibilities. It held. Sarah closed her book and looked up at the stars. They seemed brighter here than in the big city. The night was quiet except for the gentle sounds of nature. She took a deep breath and smiled. This felt right. This felt like home. Sarah woke up at 6 in the morning on her first day of work. She had set 3 alarms because she did not want to be late. The hospital was only 15 minutes away by car, but she wanted to arrive early to make a good impression. She chose her best scrubs and made sure they were clean and pressed. Sarah looked at herself in the mirror and took a deep breath. She felt nervous but ready. This job was important to her. It was her chance to prove herself in a new place. The drive to the hospital was peaceful. The roads were not busy like in the big city. Sarah saw farms with cows and horses on both sides of the road. The morning sun made everything look fresh and bright. She rolled down her windows and let the cool air fill her car. The hospital was a 3-story building made of red brick. It looked old but well maintained. There was a small parking lot in front and a garden with benches where people could sit. Sarah parked her car and walked toward the main entrance. Inside, the hospital was clean and quiet. The floors were shiny, and the walls were painted in soft colors. Sarah went to the front desk where a woman with short hair and glasses was working. The woman looked up and smiled warmly. Her name was Linda, and she was the head nurse. Linda had been working at the hospital for 12 years and knew everyone in town. She welcomed Sarah and showed her around the building. The hospital had 3 floors with different departments on each level. The first floor had the emergency room, pharmacy, and main offices. The second floor had patient rooms and the surgery area. The third floor had more patient rooms and a small library for the staff. Linda explained that they served not just the town, but also the surrounding farming communities. Sarah would be working on the second floor with the medical patients. Linda introduced her to the other nurses and doctors she would work with. Everyone seemed friendly and welcoming. They asked where she came from and why she chose their small hospital. Dr. Martinez was the main doctor on Sarah's floor. He was about 40 years old with dark hair and a kind manner. He had grown up in the town and went to medical school in the city, but came back to serve his community. He told Sarah that working in a small hospital was different from city hospitals but very rewarding. The first patient Sarah met was an elderly farmer named Mr. Johnson. He had hurt his back while working in his fields. Mr. Johnson was worried about his crops and kept asking when he could go home. Sarah listened to his concerns and assured him that his family was taking care of everything. Mr. Johnson told Sarah about his farm and his animals. He had been farming for 50 years and had never taken a sick day until now. His wife visited him every day and brought him soup from home. Sarah could see how much the community cared for each other. The next patient was a young mother named Emma who had just had her baby. It was her first child, and she was nervous about everything. Sarah spent extra time with Emma, teaching her how to feed the baby and answer all her questions. Emma was grateful for Sarah's patience and kindness. During lunch break, Sarah sat with the other nurses in the small cafeteria. They talked about their families, their hobbies, and life in the town. Sarah learned that most of them had grown up there and chose to stay. They loved the close community feeling, and the fact that they knew all their patients personally. One nurse named Beth had moved from the city 5 years ago. Just like Sarah, she said it took some time to adjust to the slower pace, but now she could never go back to city life. Beth offered to show Sarah around town after work and introduce her to more people. In the afternoon, Sarah helped with a patient who had diabetes. The woman was scared about giving herself insulin shots. Sarah sat with her and practiced until the woman felt confident. The woman thanked Sarah many times and said she felt much better knowing Sarah would be there to help. The day passed quickly, and before Sarah knew it, her shift was over. She felt tired but satisfied. All the patients had been kind, and her co-workers had made her feel welcome. This was exactly the kind of work environment she had hoped to find. Beth kept her promise and picked up Sarah after work. They drove through the main part of town, which was just a few blocks long. There was a small post office, a bank, a hardware store, and the coffee shop that Tom had mentioned. Beth parked in front of the coffee shop and suggested they go inside. The coffee shop was called Morning Glory and was owned by a couple named Jack and Rose. They had opened it 3 years ago after Jack retired from teaching. The shop was cozy with wooden tables, soft music, and the smell of fresh coffee and baked goods. Jack and Rose were happy to meet Sarah and asked about her first day at the hospital. Word traveled fast in the small town, and they already knew she was the new nurse. They offered her a free coffee and a piece of their famous chocolate cake to celebrate her first day. While they sat and talked, several other people came into the shop. Beth introduced Sarah to each person who entered. There was the librarian, the school principal, the mechanic from the gas station, and a teacher from the elementary school. Everyone was friendly and welcoming. Sarah noticed how different this was from the city. In the city, she could go weeks without talking to her neighbors. Here, everyone seemed to know everyone else, and they all cared about each other's lives. It felt like being part of a big family. After coffee, Beth drove Sarah around the residential areas. The houses were mostly small and well-maintained. Many had gardens, and some had chickens or other small animals in their backyards. Beth pointed out where different people lived and told Sarah stories about the families. They stopped at the small park in the center of town. It had swings, a slide, and a basketball court. There was also a pavilion where the town held events and celebrations. Beth said there would be a summer festival next month with food, music, and games for everyone. As they walked through the park, Sarah saw children playing while their parents watched from benches. She noticed how safe and peaceful everything felt. The children could play freely without their parents worrying about danger. This was something she had missed from her own childhood. Beth drove Sarah home as the sun was setting. They made plans to have lunch together the next day and for Beth to introduce Sarah to more people in town. Sarah thanked Beth for her kindness and went inside her house feeling happy and hopeful. That evening, Sarah called her mother to tell her about her first day. Her mother was relieved to hear that everything had gone well and that Sarah was making friends. Her mother had worried about Sarah moving so far away from family, but now she felt better about the decision. Before going to bed, Sarah sat on her front porch and looked at the quiet street. A few neighbors were out walking their dogs or working in their gardens. Mrs. Peterson waved from her yard where she was picking flowers. Sarah waved back and felt grateful for all the kindness she had received. She thought about her old life. in the city and realized she did not miss it as much as she thought she would. Here she felt like she mattered. Her work was important, and people appreciated what she did. She was not just another face in a crowd, but a valued member of a community. Sarah went inside and prepared for her second day of work. She felt confident and excited about the future. This move had been the right decision, and she looked forward to building a new life in this special place. 2 weeks had passed since Sarah started working at the hospital. She was getting used to her new routine and felt more comfortable with her patients and coworkers. Every morning she would wave to Mrs. Peterson as she left for work, and every evening she would sit under her big tree and read. On this particular morning, Sarah noticed something different when she arrived at the hospital. There were more cars in the parking lot than usual, and people looked worried. Linda met her at the entrance with a serious expression on her face. There had been an accident on the main highway early that morning. A truck carrying supplies to the farms had crashed during the heavy rain. The driver was hurt badly, and 2 people in another car were also injured. The nearest big hospital was an hour away, so everyone was being brought to their small hospital. Sarah had never dealt with such a serious emergency before. In the city hospital where she trained, there were always many doctors and nurses available. Here, they had fewer people and less equipment. She felt scared but knew she had to help. Dr. Martinez was already preparing the surgery room. He asked Sarah to help him get everything ready while the other nurses prepared beds for the patients. Sarah worked quickly, gathering supplies and making sure all the equipment was clean and working properly. The ambulance arrived with the truck driver first. He was a middle-aged man named Pete who delivered supplies to all the farms in the area. Everyone in town knew him because he was always friendly and helpful. Seeing him hurt made everyone even more concerned. Pete was unconscious and had several broken bones. Dr. Martinez examined him carefully while Sarah monitored his vital signs. She had to stay calm and focused, even though her heart was beating fast. The doctor needed her to be strong and reliable. The second ambulance brought in a young couple from the city who were driving through town. They were on their way to visit family and had been caught in the accident. The woman had a broken arm, and the man had cuts on his face and a possible concussion. Sarah was assigned to take care of the woman, whose name was Jessica. Jessica was crying and asking about her boyfriend Michael. She was scared and in pain, and kept saying she wanted to go home. Sarah held her hand and spoke softly to her, explaining what was happening and assuring her that Michael was being taken care of. While Sarah cleaned Jessica's wounds and prepared her arm for the doctor to set the broken bone, she learned that Jessica and Michael were engaged to be married next month. They were driving to see Michael's grandmother, who lived 2 towns away. Jessica was worried that their wedding would have to be postponed. Dr. Martinez worked on Pete for 3 hours. Sarah assisted him, handing him tools and monitoring Pete's condition. It was intense work, and Sarah had to concentrate completely. She was amazed by Dr. Martinez's skill and calmness under pressure during the surgery. Other people from the town started arriving at the hospital. Pete's wife came with their 2 teenage children. Jessica's mother drove from the city after getting the phone call. Michael's family also came to see what had happened, the hospital waiting room filled with worried people. Sarah noticed how the townspeople took care of Pete's family, bringing them food and coffee and staying with them to offer support. This was different from what she had seen in city hospitals, where families often waited alone after the surgery. Dr. Martinez told everyone that Pete would be okay, but he needed to stay in the hospital for several days. His injuries were serious, but he would recover completely with time and rest. Pete's wife cried with relief, and the townspeople hugged each other and celebrated the good news. Jessica's broken arm was set and put in a cast. She would need to wear it for 6 weeks, but she could go home that same day. Michael had a mild concussion and would need to rest for a few days, but he was also going to be fine. The young couple was grateful for the care they received. Sarah felt proud of how she had handled the emergency. She had stayed calm and done her job well, even when she felt scared. Dr. Martinez thanked her for her help and said she had shown great skill and professionalism. The other nurses also praised her work. That evening, Sarah was tired but felt good about what she had accomplished. She realized that working in a small hospital meant she would have more responsibility and would need to handle different types of situations. This challenge excited her rather than scared her. The next day, Pete was awake and feeling better. His family was relieved, and his wife thanked Sarah many times for taking such good care of him. Pete told Sarah that he had been driving that route for 15 years and had never had an accident before. The rain had made the roads very slippery. Jessica and Michael came back to visit and thanked the staff. Jessica's arm was still sore, but she was happy that they would not have to postpone their wedding. Michael brought flowers for all the nurses and a special card for Sarah. They said they would never forget the kindness they received in the small town over the next few days. Sarah noticed that word of her good work during the emergency had spread through the town. People she met at the store or on the street thanked her for helping during the crisis. She felt proud to be part of the community and to have contributed when people needed help. Mrs. Peterson invited Sarah over for dinner to celebrate her successful handling of the emergency. She cooked a special meal with roast chicken, mashed potatoes, and fresh vegetables from her garden. During dinner, Mrs. Peterson told Sarah that the whole town was talking about how well she had performed under pressure. At the hospital, Sarah found that her relationship with her coworkers had grown stronger after working together during the emergency. They trusted her more and included her in more decisions about patient care. Linda told her that she was becoming an important part of their team. Dr. Martinez started asking Sarah to assist him with more complicated procedures. He said he was impressed with her skills and wanted to help her learn new things. Sarah was excited about the opportunity to expand her knowledge and become an even better nurse. One afternoon, Sarah received a surprise visitor at the hospital. Her sister Amy had driven from the city to see her. Amy was curious about Sarah's new life and wanted to see the town and hospital where Sarah worked. Sarah was happy to show her around and introduce her to everyone. Amy was surprised by how small and quiet the town was compared to the city. She met Mrs. Peterson and saw Sarah's house. Amy admitted that she had been worried about Sarah living so far from family, but seeing how happy and settled Sarah was made her feel better. During Amy's visit, Sarah realized how much her life had changed in just a few weeks. She felt more confident in her work, had made good friends, and was truly part of a community. She was no longer the nervous, uncertain person who had arrived in town. Amy stayed for 3 days, and during that time she got to see how the town worked. She noticed how people helped each other and cared about their neighbors. She saw how important Sarah's work was to the community and how much people appreciated her. When Amy left to go back to the city, she told Sarah that she was proud of her for making such a big change in her life. She said Sarah seemed happier and more confident than she had been in years. Amy promised to visit again soon and to tell their parents how well Sarah was doing. That night, Sarah sat under her tree and thought about everything that had happened since she arrived. The emergency at the hospital had been scary, but it had also shown her that she could handle difficult situations. She felt stronger and more capable than ever. Before Sarah looked up at the stars and smiled. She had found her place in the world. This small town, with its caring people and meaningful work, was exactly where she belonged. She was no longer just surviving, but truly living and thriving in her new home. Summer had arrived in full force, and the town was preparing for its annual festival. Sarah had been living there for 2 months now, and she felt completely at home. The festival was something everyone talked about with excitement. It was the biggest event of the year, and people came from neighboring towns to join the celebration. Sarah volunteered to help with the medical station at the festival. Dr. Martinez thought it was a good idea to have nurses available in case anyone got hurt or felt sick during the hot summer day. Sarah was eager to help and to be more involved in the community event. The festival was held in the town park and the main street. Local businesses set up booths selling food, crafts, and games. There was a small stage where local musicians would perform throughout the day. Children could enjoy pony rides, face painting, and a small carnival with games and prizes. Mrs. Peterson was in charge of the baking contest, which was always a popular event. She had been working for weeks to organize it and make sure everything would run smoothly. She asked Sarah to be one of the judges, along with the school principal and the owner of the coffee shop. The morning of the festival, Sarah woke up early and put on a comfortable dress and walking shoes. She knew it would be a long day on her feet. The weather was perfect, with bright sunshine and a gentle breeze. She could already hear people setting up in the park as she ate her breakfast. When Sarah arrived at the festival grounds, she was amazed by how much work had been done overnight. Colorful banners hung between the trees, and dozens of booths were arranged in neat rows. The smell of grilled food and fresh baked goods filled the air. People were arriving early to get the best spots and start enjoying the festivities. The medical station was a small tent near the main entrance. Sarah set it up with basic supplies like bandages, ice packs, and medicine for headaches. She hoped she would not need to use much, but it was important to be prepared. Dr. Martinez stopped by to check on her and to wish her a good day. By 10 in the morning, the festival was in full swing. Families with children were everywhere, and the noise level was rising with laughter, music, and conversation. Sarah enjoyed watching everyone have fun while she stayed ready to help if needed. Her first patient was a little boy who had scraped his knee while running between the booths. His mother brought him to Sarah, and the boy was crying loudly. Sarah cleaned the scrape gently and put a colorful bandage on it. She gave him a small toy from her supplies, and soon he was smiling and ready to go play again. Throughout the morning, Sarah helped several people with minor problems. An elderly man felt dizzy from the heat, so she gave him water and had him sit in the shade until he felt better. A teenage girl got stung by a bee, and Sarah treated the sting and made sure she was not having an allergic reaction around noon. It was time for the baking contest. Sarah left the medical station in the care of a volunteer and went to the judging table. There were 23 entries, including pies, cakes, cookies, and breads. Everything looked and smelled delicious, and Sarah felt honored to be chosen as a judge. The other judges were Mr. Williams, the school principal, and Jack from the coffee shop. They had done this for several years and gave Sarah tips on what to look for. They would judge based on appearance, taste, and creativity. Each entry had a number, so they would not know who made what until after the judging. Sarah tasted apple pies, chocolate cakes, lemon cookies, and many other wonderful treats. Some were simple and traditional, while others were creative and unusual. There was even a cake decorated to look like the town's main street, complete with tiny buildings made of frosting. The hardest part was choosing the winners because everything was so good. After much discussion and several rounds of tasting, they selected the top 3 entries in each category. Sarah was surprised to learn that Mrs. Peterson had won first place for her apple pie, the same kind she had brought to welcome Sarah to town. After the judging, Sarah returned to the medical station. The afternoon brought more visitors as people came from other towns to join the festival. She treated a few more minor injuries and helped several people who were feeling overheated from the summer sun. Around 4 o'clock, Sarah heard commotion near the stage area. A crowd was gathering and people looked concerned. She grabbed her medical kit and hurried over to see what was happening. An elderly woman had collapsed while watching the music performance. The woman's name was Mrs. Garcia, and she was visiting from the next town with her family. She was conscious but felt weak and confused. Sarah quickly checked her vital signs while her family gathered around nervously. Mrs. Garcia's pulse was irregular, and Sarah was concerned about her heart. Sarah asked someone to call Dr. Martinez, while she helped Mrs. Garcia lie down comfortably. She loosened the woman's clothing and made sure she could breathe easily. The crowd stepped back to give them space, but everyone stayed nearby, ready to help if needed. Dr. Martinez arrived within minutes and examined Mrs. Garcia carefully. He agreed with Sarah that they needed to take her to the hospital for tests. An ambulance was called, and while they waited, Sarah stayed with Mrs. Garcia and her family, monitoring her condition and keeping her calm. Mrs. Garcia's daughter was very worried and kept thanking Sarah for helping her mother. Sarah explained, what they were doing and why, helping the family understand the situation without causing more panic. Her calm manner and clear explanations helped everyone feel more at ease. The ambulance arrived quickly, and Mrs. Garcia was taken to the hospital. Dr. Martinez went with her, leaving Sarah to clean up the medical station. Later that evening, they learned that Mrs. Garcia had experienced a mild heart problem, but would be fine with proper treatment and rest. As the festival wound down in the evening, Sarah helped pack up the medical supplies and clean the area. She felt good about how she had handled the emergency with Mrs. Garcia. Once again, she had stayed calm under pressure and provided good care when someone needed help. The festival organizers thanked Sarah for volunteering and for her quick response during the medical emergency. Several people came by to tell her how glad they were to have such a skilled nurse in their community. Sarah felt proud and appreciated for her contributions to the town. That night there was a dance in the park. As the final event of the festival, a local band played country and folk music while people danced under the stars. Sarah danced with several of her new friends and felt truly part of the community. Celebration. Mrs. Peterson found Sarah during the dance and told her how proud she was of her. She said Sarah had become like a daughter to her and was such an important addition to their town. Sarah felt touched by these kind words and grateful for all the friendships she had made. As the evening ended and people began to clean up, Sarah reflected on her day. She had helped judge a baking contest, provided medical care to several people, handled a cardiac emergency, and celebrated with her new community. It had been a full and meaningful day. Walking home under the streetlights, Sarah thought about how different her life was now compared to just a few months ago. In the city, she had been just one person among millions. Here, she was a valued member of a close-knit community where her skills and presence made a real difference. Sarah reached her house and sat on her front porch for a few minutes, listening to the quiet sounds of the night. She could see lights still on in a few houses where people were probably talking about the day's events. Tomorrow, life would return to normal, but everyone would have memories of a wonderful festival. She went inside and got ready for bed, feeling tired but completely satisfied. The festival had shown her once again that she had made the right choice in moving to this special place. She was not just living here. She was truly home. Fall arrived earlier than expected that year. By late August, the leaves on Sarah's big tree were already starting to change colors. The air became cooler in the mornings, and people began talking about preparing for winter. Sarah had never experienced a small-town winter before, and everyone wanted to help her get ready. At the hospital, things had settled into a comfortable routine. Sarah knew all the regular patients now, and they often asked for her specifically when they came in. She had become Dr. Martinez's most trusted nurse, and he often asked her opinion about patient care. This made Sarah feel proud and valued. One morning in September, Sarah noticed a new patient in the waiting room. He was a young man about her age with dark hair and kind eyes. He looked nervous and kept checking his watch. When his name was called, Sarah was the nurse assigned to take his vital signs and prepare him for the doctor. His name was David, and he had just moved to town to work as the new teacher at the elementary school. He needed a physical exam for his job and some vaccinations. As Sarah took his blood pressure and temperature, they talked about being new in town. David had moved from a medium-sized city and was adjusting to small-town life. David told Sarah that he was nervous about starting his new job. He would be teaching third grade, and he wanted to make a good impression on the children and their parents. Sarah understood his feelings because she had felt the same way when she first arrived. She assured him that the people in town were very welcoming and supportive. During his appointment, David mentioned that he was living in a small apartment above the hardware store. He said it was temporary until he could find a better place. Sarah remembered how lonely she had felt in her first few days and offered to show him around town sometime. David seemed grateful for the offer. A few days later, Sarah ran into David at the grocery store. He was standing in the cereal aisle looking confused by all the choices. Sarah helped him pick out some basic groceries and suggested some good local products. They walked through the store together, and Sarah introduced him to Tom, The store owner, Tom, was happy to meet the new teacher and told David about the store's delivery service for heavy items. He also mentioned that there was a discount for teachers and hospital workers. David was surprised by this kindness and thanked Tom for the information. After shopping, Sarah invited David to have coffee at Morning Glory. Jack and Rose were excited to meet the new teacher and asked about his plans for the school year. David explained that he hoped to start a reading program and maybe organize some field trips to local farms and businesses. Sarah enjoyed talking with David. He was intelligent and funny, and he seemed to genuinely care about his students and the community. They discovered they both liked reading, hiking, and trying new foods. David had grown up in a small town too, so he understood the benefits and challenges of small-town life. Over the next few weeks, Sarah and David began spending more time together. She showed him the best places to eat, the library, and the trails for walking and hiking. David told her about his students and the funny things they said and did. Sarah shared stories about her patients and her work at the hospital. Mrs. Peterson noticed that Sarah seemed happier and more cheerful than usual. When Sarah mentioned her new friend David, Mrs. Peterson was very interested. She had heard good things about the new teacher from parents whose children were in his class. She invited both Sarah and David for dinner the following Sunday. The dinner at Mrs. Peterson's house was wonderful. She cooked a traditional pot roast with vegetables from her garden. David brought flowers and a homemade dessert. Mrs. Peterson told stories about the town's history and asked David about his teaching methods and goals for his students. During dinner, Mrs. Peterson mentioned that David might be interested in the house that was for sale 2 blocks from Sarah's street. The previous owner had moved to live with family in another state. The house was small but well-maintained, with a nice yard and garage. David was very interested and asked for more details. The next day, Sarah offered to go with David to look at the house. It was a white house with blue shutters, similar to Mrs. Peterson's style. It had 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a small kitchen, and a living room with a fireplace. The yard had mature trees and space for a garden. David loved it. Immediately, the house was perfect for a single person, but had room to grow if needed. The price was reasonable, and the location was ideal for walking to school and the town center. David decided to make an offer, and within a week, his bid was accepted. He would be able to move in before winter arrived. Sarah helped David with the paperwork and connected him with local services like utilities and internet. She also introduced him to reliable repair people that Mrs. Peterson had recommended. David appreciated all her help and said he could not have managed everything without her guidance. As October arrived, David moved into his new house. Sarah organized a small housewarming party and invited some of their mutual friends from town. Mrs. Peterson brought a casserole, Beth brought flowers, and several other neighbors came with gifts and good wishes. David felt welcomed and supported by his new community. During the party, Sarah noticed how well David fit in with everyone. He listened to people's stories, asked thoughtful questions, and seemed genuinely interested in their lives. The townspeople clearly liked him and were happy to have such a caring teacher for their children. After the party, Sarah and David sat on his front porch and talked about how much their lives had changed. Both had taken big risks by moving to a new place, but both felt they had made the right decision. They had found not only new jobs, but also a real sense of belonging and purpose. David's students adored him. Parents often stopped Sarah at the store or hospital to tell her how much their children enjoyed school now. David had started the reading program he wanted, and the children were excited about books and learning. He also organized visits to local businesses so students could learn about different jobs in their community. One afternoon, David asked Sarah if she would help him with a special project. He wanted to create a community health education program for his students and their families. Sarah was excited about the idea and agreed to help plan lessons about nutrition, exercise, and basic first aid. They worked together in the evenings at David's house, planning the curriculum and creating materials. Sarah enjoyed using her medical knowledge in a new way, and David appreciated her expertise. They made a good team, combining his teaching skills with her health knowledge. The program was a great success. Parents attended the evening sessions with their children, and everyone learned useful information about staying healthy. Sarah taught basic first aid, proper hand washing, and how to recognize when someone needed medical attention. David helped make the lessons fun and interactive for the children. As November arrived and the weather grew colder, Sarah realized how much her life had changed since spring. She had gone from being a lonely newcomer to being a valued member of the community. She had meaningful work, good friends, and now a special relationship with David that seemed to be growing stronger every day. One evening, as they finished planning another health lesson, David walked Sarah to her car. He thanked her again for all her help and support since he arrived in town. He said that meeting her had made his transition so much easier and more enjoyable. Sarah felt the same way about their friendship. Looking at the stars above their small town, Sarah thought about how unexpected life could be. She had come here looking for a fresh start and a new job. She had found those things, but she had also found a real home, genuine friendships, and possibly something even more special with David. The future looked bright and full of possibilities.